Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the house. On tonight, we will be looking into chapter 9. So, I am chapter 9 from the I Live to Tell It testimonial anthology, From Grief to Glory. So, I'm going to give you a couple of words that resonates when you hear the term grief, and then I'm going to share some couple of words that resonate with glory. And then I must give you three areas that I'm going to focus on tonight, and then I'm gonna get out your way. So, grief, sorrow, misery, anguish, distress, agony, heartbreak, and affliction. And then glory is fame, honor, preeminence, praise, greatness, prestige, and magnificence. So, as I wrote this chapter, God was showing me that He wanted me to move from those negative aspects or those dark places or those verbs, nouns, adjectives, right, that describe something that is challenging in our life. So grief can be anything in your life that causes you any of those words. So that causes sorrow, heartbreak. But God wants us to move from that to glory, which is honor and praise. And ultimately, we know that God gets the praise out of our lives. So each of us has dealt with some level of grief, whether it is the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, changes in relationships, the loss of finances, sudden changes in your life, or changes in your health. So for tonight, we want to look at three areas that I want to talk about. The first one is grief shows up in ways that make you question your existence on earth. What do I mean by that? It means that that sorrow or that misery or that heartbreak or that affliction or that agony will show up when you least expect it. And when it does show up, it kind of hits you, off guard. It comes unaware. And like me, if you're anything like me, you do question your existence because the heartbreak or the pain that you're feeling right in that moment feels like it's unbearable. It feels like you can't move on. It feels like I can't get past this, right? And so we don't always see the glory in the challenges or in the trials or in the pain. But God never meant for us to feel helpless or hopeless or feel like we can't make it because we've been stricken with grief. We also know in the Bible that Jesus did grieve, right? Jesus did weep. Jesus did cry. So he knows those feelings that we feel in the natural. But we have to also remember that we are spirit beings. So in the spirit and in the natural, we deal with things differently. So it's natural that we feel heartbreak. It's natural that we feel sorrow. It's natural that we weep and cry. All of those things are natural, but we shouldn't allow it to be a stronghold, which brings me to the second point. Grief is a stronghold that wants to control your life, which simply means that if we are not careful and dealing with our emotions, that grief will control your life and ultimately take your life. I dealt with levels of depression, levels of trauma. Um, we all know about the stages, the 5 stages that you are ultimately supposed to go through. I don't think everybody goes through those stages, But if you do, you know that it's not easy to deal with any level of grief. And grief is just like the devil. Really, it comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. And so we have to stay in God's face, stay in God's presence, and allow God to heal our brokenness, heal our sorrow, heal our misery, and realize that each of us have an expiration date. The third point is that grief will cause you to pick up old habits, change your appearance, and isolate yourself. So again, we're talking about emotions. As May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and grief is right under that umbrella because it deals with emotions, it deals with depression, it deals with racing thoughts, and so much more. Grief can open up other things to come upon you when you're not dealing with grief properly or not dealing with it in a healthy manner. So, suffering in silence, which again is depression, isolating yourself, which again is depression, um, changing your appearance. So, for me, I'll just give you a little bit about why I say that. So, when I first started to recognize what grief was doing in my life, and this was years before the passing of my dad. So, my dad passed away in 2014, so it's been 8 years. But I even can go back to when I was in high school and I used to pull out my eyelashes. And I know you probably thinking, what? She a little loco. But again, this is grief, right? And another thing I did was I started wearing clothing that had skulls and crossbones on it. And it took many years of therapy, many years of counseling, and me reading the word and pastoral guidance and all that stuff to realize what I was actually doing. And I was actually calling death to myself. So, like what's the Bible verse? Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Well, life and death is also in the things that we wear, contrary to belief. But it's in the things that we wear as well. So I just wanted to point that out, and that's why I put that part in the book about changing your appearance. Like we have to be careful what we wear, even down to like jewelry, the way we style our hair. I mean, all of that stuff really plays a role in how we handle trials and tribulations when they come upon us. So that's just a tad bit of what I did. I remember when my dad passed away, I quit my job. So again, isolating yourself from others. I stayed in the house for 2 years, unemployed. I dropped out of school. And at the time, again, I'm being led by my emotions. So I can't think in the natural or in the spirit realm. So I feel this way. So at that moment, this is what I'm doing. So grief can have you doing things suddenly and then regretting them later. because you didn't think it all the way through. So God wants us to move from grief to glory in any area of our life, right? So again, if that is the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, changes in a relationship, the loss of finances, sudden changes in your life or changes in your health, God doesn't want you to be stuck there. He doesn't want you to be in bondage and trapped because of an emotion that you're feeling behind the sudden change or behind the thing that has been placed in your lap, so to speak, that was out of your control, right? So, um, everything that happens to us, around us, God knows about it. And ultimately, God is with us even in it. Even when we can't see it, we may not feel it all the time. We may not think God is there, but God is there with us. He hears us. He understands. Because like I said earlier, God did grieve as well in the Bible.